Closing the racial wealth gap in reparations.
Yes, close the racial wealth gap, absolutely.
I believe it's time to start the national, full-blown conversation about reparations in this country.
Free tuition for all African American students. Why is that? Well, they say it's to make reparations for slavery, a practice abolished more than 150 years ago. The resolution also, by the way, denounces standardized tests for, quote, upholding white supremacy, and calls on the school to admit any currently incarcerated black person who wants to attend. They do not exclude violent criminals from that category.
Are you kidding me? Are we actually doing this right now? That's it! I've had it with all this race talk. It's 2019. Race shouldn't even be a thing anymore, but apparently it is. And it's in the most stupid form yet. And this reparations bill is the match that lit the fire for me. It's about the most dumbest thing I've ever heard, and it's poster child racist. It's the reason I'm making this video. I'm about to drop my 2 cents on this bill and racism entirely, because this is on some otherworldly type shit, and I'm sick of it.
Don't make me lose my mind. Up in here, up.
So recently there has been hearings about a possibility to form a bill for reparations for African Americans. It is proposed with the intention of repayment and giving special benefits to all of the African American descendant slaves that lived 150 years ago. The argument they put up is that it's time for America to repay the blacks of 400 years of horrible atrocities that had taken place back then. Now, if it's not already obvious, I am highly against this bill. It is a disaster bound to be, and everyone with the brain can tell that this is only a ruse to buy votes. Now, I'm not a big political advocate, but I bet the most neutral party can see the stupidity in this. Slavery was a horrible time, and nobody's denying that. But what I don't get is how would giving free money and benefits to people who have never been slaves right the wrongs that was committed back then? The blacks today are nowhere near slaves. They own land, they own businesses, they are your neighbors, they can rise as high as any white person. So why is there a need for repayment? America's already paid. I'm not saying that blacks live a perfect life. We all have our problems, just like anybody else. But comparing to what we had back in the day, we've come a long way. This bill is just another tactic to remind people of color who they are and their place in society, while at the same time polarizing the American people by forcing their people to recognize their skin color and realize their privilege or underprivilege. Now, setting the validity of this bill aside, even if we did put this bill into action, how are we supposed to identify every single slave descendant? And upon finding them, how are we going to know their claims are valid? I can almost guarantee you the research will not be done. This idea only works in theory. We may try to conduct research for maybe the first couple years introduced, but over time, when more and more people file claims and ask for benefits and they're denied, the bill will be expanded to cater to other minority groups. So eventually, any and everybody that's offended in some way, they say America's done them wrong and somehow they're going to get benefits some way. Now, if you're smarter than the average bear, you can tell that this bill is closely impossible to conduct. And you'd be right, this whole thing is a pandering scheme. But to humor this idea for a little bit, let's start with the idea of free college. We've been told that college is the key to success. If you didn't go to college, you would grow to be poor. The biggest thing for college is tuition. You can best believe everybody and their mother is trying to get their hands on it because everybody wants free college. College debt is a huge problem, a $1.5 trillion problem in fact. So these college students are going to be burdened by their debt number for years or even for the rest of their lives. So offering free tuition is going to be a huge cash grab for everyone. But it's going to cause problems. Free tuition is not free. Somebody's going to pay for it. And since they want to include violent offenders into these colleges, with no discrimination or qualification as to whether or not they're academically sound, let alone being sound enough to be around people, will not be too happy on being forced to fund tax dollars onto these people and not their own children. And mind you, they're going to be accepted into these pretty big universities that are quite expensive. Matter of fact, a lot of colleges are going to be expensive. This opportunities is what college students salivate over. We all want free college. Matter of fact, take for example, we all remember the Indian student VJ Chokal Ingram.
I shaved my head, I trimmed my eyelashes, and I decided to join the organization of black students.
That's right. This dude went from this to this, and then got his black friend to get him to an organization for black students at the University of Chicago, and then from there, he started applying into medical schools as a black person. To be honest, I can't blame him. I don't know squat about med school, but it don't take an Einstein to know that being admitted to a med school is no cakewalk. I've heard people sell their souls to be even accepted as a candidate for the program. And the reasoning he did this was because blacks have a higher chance of getting into med school because they want to have diversity in their programs. So getting accepted just by your skin color alone is I don't even understand why they have that in the first place. Asking applicants what race they are shouldn't even have a question in there like that. Getting accepted as a black person in med school alone has a higher chance than anyone else. That just spells privilege right there. And on top of the reparations that's giving out free tuition, you're pretty much living the dream. So many people are going to be claiming they have black heritage. So many lawsuits, so much money being spent. It's an all-out shitstorm. And it won't stop there. Soon, immigrants, legal or illegal, will want repayment. Women, LGBT, disabled, it will never end. It just perpetuates the victimhood and mentality and an entitlement mentality. We have enough of that, and we don't need more. This idea will tear this country apart and put everybody into factions, easier to divide, relying on the government. And that is exactly what I don't want, relying on the government. How can you say you're independent when you're relying on somebody else? No one will ever take the black community seriously when they know the government is making other people pay for them. We will never command respect, and racism will never die. And on that note, let's dive into racism itself. Okay, so race relations have dramatically improved in the present day. It's so much so that people who actually discriminate against minorities are a lot of times dealt with quick by the public eye, whether it be online or in person, stuff like that. But the problem is, we built this hysteria of fear of regressing back into the old ways. You know, the old ways such as the times of the KKK, the Jim Crow, wide government policies that were passed to specifically discriminate against black people. I mean, actually discriminate against them. It's so bad that I feel like this hysteria is being exploited. People are very afraid to speak out in fear of being labeled a racist. Let's take a white person. If a white person speaks out against active unfairness or discrimination they may experience, they're laughed at. And they're told that white people cannot experience racism, or you can't be racist to white people. So, approving the bashing of European descent and labeling them without consequence created all these radical groups. And if there's one thing I learned about the general public, especially with these high-tech platforms, if something can be taken too far, it will. You can't speak up. And these radicals have so much disdain for America that apparently it's racist to wave an American flag in some places. Like you can't even celebrate your country you live in. And you know what I find weird? Is that the same people who love to wave their home country's flag and bash America and just say, I hate this place and all that, they consider it a hate crime if they get sent back there. I don't know. I just found that strange. Like, if you hate this place so much, why stay here? Anyways, I can't seem to turn around without somebody in the news or somebody on social media crying about something happening to them, like some goal they couldn't achieve. You know, maybe it was somebody being mean to them, or so they're being treated unfairly at work, or, you know, the solution was always somebody's being racist to them. I mean, especially at the workplace. You know, they just say it's a racist issue and then record the whole thing and put it on Facebook to paint them, the employees, and the entire company in a bad light.
You never have money when you come in
We
here, bro.
never have
We
money.
never got money.
We got no money, bro. Like, can we just get our
I might
food?
just run off of my food today.
Can we just get our food,
I
folks?
just might run off.
Here's a prime example. The guy's name is Massad Ali. He recorded this shit on Twitter, and unsurprisingly it goes viral, with the poor manager's face uncensored and all. And to square that, this guy had the gall to title it, "Can a group of young, well-established African Americans get a bite to eat after a long workout session?" And as a result, the public responds like, if I was the white woman who walked in and saw what was going on, I would refuse to order or eat until they serve those men. This is ridiculous. I think this made me the angriest out of the thread. Don't be hating. Instead of using your white privilege to help the situation, or refusing or patronizing an establishment that is discriminating, bitch is trash. They weren't difficult until they didn't get served. You're missing the point. Also, white lady should have insisted they got served before her. Hope I would have. Shame on you. So after all that bashing, the manager was fired and Chipotle had to make a public statement. What happened here is not how our employees should treat our customers. We are committed to treating all of our guests fairly and with respect. The manager has been terminated and the restaurant has been retrained so this doesn't happen again. We'll be back in touch. Now keep in mind, as a company, they really had no choice. They had to keep their image in the best light possible, and with that video out in public, they didn't really have anything they could do. They could lose serious business if they didn't do anything. But here's the kicker to this whole thing. It was all planned.
It turned out that the manager was not being racist. Masood Ali indeed had a history of ordering food that he could not pay for. In fact, he even bragged on social media about dining and dashing.
This guy is a known dine and ditcher, and this time he decided to take it to a whole new extreme when a manager finally stood up and had enough. This guy knew that if he made this incident a racial one, he would gain the public support online, and that is exactly what happened. Ultimately, the manager got her job back after finding out the guy was a fraud, but the damage was already done. The fact that it was so easy for him to play the public and get the right people to destroy the manager's reputation shows the power of fear. Yes, the company could have investigated further and gathered all the details before taking action, but if they did, the public would have seen that as just racial oppression, and saying that the company is siding with the racist bigot of a manager they have working there. And then that will get all over the internet, and then Chipotle would find himself even in more trouble. Now, I know this story's a bit old, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. He took full advantage of the hysteria that plagues us. If there is anything that takes us back into the 50s, it's stuff like this. And this is just one incident. So many people are playing the race card because they know if the news falls onto the right ears, they can get their way. Shit like this is what keep racism alive. Martin Luther King said it best. Judge one by their character, not by their skin color. But what we got now is exactly the opposite. Your skin acts as the foundation of how you're treated. You think we're past this, but nope. And if the way we're headed, it's not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. Now let's take the cases of Michael Brown, Terrence Kutcher, and Walter Scott. All three of them have a common factor. They were all shot by cops. But what made these cases so big was the fact that these were acts headlined by a white police officer shoots an unarmed black man. Completely turned a blind eye to the fact that a man was shot by a police officer. We have rights as citizens. A proper investigation needs to be done. Whether the action was justified or not is kind of shaky. But the problem with these race-baiting headlines and articles cover the story is that they have a specific agenda, and it's no accident. They automatically deem the police officer guilty and the person getting shot a victim. We don't know the details of what transpired between the two, which is why it's best to be handled by professionals, not the public. But when you include race in crime, especially in murder, it does nothing but involve third parties. These third parties can include people like the new Black Panther Party, Black Lives Matter, Antifa. But these crimes are very serious and need to be handled as such. But outside sources absolutely do not need to be involved. They only perpetuate racial violence. Further, the white versus black oppressed versus oppressor mentality. And now, the race card is so big, it's everywhere. And when reading some of these articles, I honestly hate it when I see news articles starting off with, let's have an honest conversation about race. Because if you ask me, I haven't seen one yet. And if there is any of them that actually speak the truth, they're deemed racist and even taken down. And the ones that are approved, I already know what they're going to be about. They basically just tell white people to recognize their privilege and the blacks that we are oppressed, we need to stand up and be angry against the evil slave master. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. Discrimination does still go on, but however, racism doesn't hold a candle to what it had back in the day. There's no need to be up in arms and alert about it. Because if someone wants to be a racist bigot, let them be. Not too many people want to deal with them anyway. And when the public finds out that how they are, they're not going to last long in the public eye anyway. Just ask Paula Deen how that worked out for her. So if there was anything to get out of this, pretty much all I'm trying to say is take responsibility for yourself. Work hard. Don't be a victim. Dominate life. Don't let it dominate you. There's no law, no incentive, no racial policy that can possibly even out the playing field. We have control of our own lives and our own lives only. At the end of the day, we all are human. Living, breathing beings that live on the same planet. Some come a little lighter, some come a little darker. Some have different backgrounds. Actually, all have different backgrounds. So instead of demonizing, let's learn. Because when you learn, you build. And when you build, you grow.
I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
This country does have blood on its hands. All we can do now is learn from it. There's no reason to shred more blood. It doesn't do anybody any good. Instead of approaching people with a closed fist, why not walk to them with an open hand? There are millions of people on this planet. There's a lot of opportunity to build and grow. So what are you waiting for? Get to work.
Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it.